Now, Cicero was speaking of what we speak of was trying to tell his son, his very young, naive son, which he knew would never become a virtuous man or a prudent man. And it's kind of a sad feeling, whenever your parents don't see you as a person capable of becoming the best that he or she can be. But regardless, Cicero was wise enough to realize the fact that his son is not going to be the wise person that he wants his son to be. So instead of trying to talk to him and make him understand and try to preach him about what the absolute perfect moral virtues are, he instead tries to make him aware of the second grade of virtues, right? Not the absolute perfectness of moral virtues, but the second grade or the second class sets of virtues, right? And those things would be what Aristotle calls as courageous, self-discipline, self-control, temperament, magnificent, magnanimity, right? Moderation. Those things are the second class or the second grade virtues. And I'll tell you why they are. And so he tries to make his son understand those things. And then the thing is that he is trying to make his son aware of what he's trying to illustrate to him by using examples from historical figures, right, that have existed before him and that have existed before his son. So he's trying to use living examples or the past examples, historical, real-life examples, in order to demonstrate to his son the kinds of virtues, the kinds of morality he wants his son to be imbibed in, to learn, right, and practice and become like that. So he uses this issue. He starts off, and this is one of the most important philosophical questions that you will ever find. And he is right to say that this is one of the things that we as human beings should spend most of our time trying to ponder and think about what the implications are. And that issue becomes the issue between, or the clash between, doing something which is morally right and doing something which is expedient, or in other words, doing something which is morally right and doing something which is convenient, which is, in a worldly sense, practical, right? From a common sense point of view, it may seem practical and very convenient to do certain things, but in doing so, it clashes with the moral rightness or the moral virtues of the individual, right, of morality itself. So the issue is, which he raises, is this. He says that, you see, nowadays many people claim that there's always, and in life, he says, and he rightly says that, Cicero, he is saying, you see, in life you're bound to have these events and circumstances in your life where you may seem that there's a clash between doing something which is morally right and doing something which is expedient, right, which is convenient, right? In other words, in life, sometimes you are put in a position, in the circumstances where you have to make a choice, either do something which is morally right and do something which is convenient, do something which is expedient. Because doing something expedient or convenient or commonsensical notions of of practicality means that you do something morally right or you do something which is advantageous to you, right? So people may say, oh, what's the point of learning? What's the point of philosophical thinking? When in reality it brings you nothing. You see, so there's a clash. So a person is faced with a dilemma. Should I pursue the quest for wisdom for its own sake, or should I do something more practical with my life so that I can make a living? You see, those are a big moral conundrum. Or for instance, if you are a student, right, and during exams, you may either during exams. This is the example which I used last time, was that you are in an exam hall, you learn nothing, you did not study for your exams, right? And then you're in the examination center, and then now you are faced with a choice. Either you cheat and pass, or you fail honorably, right? Which is morally right. Doing something morally right, i.e. fail honorably, or doing something expedient or advantageous or practical, that is cheat and pass. And say, for instance, that in the examination hall there are no teachers or there are no invigilators to keep a watch on you during examinations. Now, what would you do? You did not study for your exam, but you know that you need to pass the exam. So now you are faced with a conundrum. Do you cheat and pass, which is expedient, or do you fail honorably, which is morally right? So the thing is what Cicero is telling his son is that, you see, these are the things that you will come up in life. But I'll tell you one thing, Cicero tells his son. I'll tell you one thing, you see, but this is a wrong distinction. He says, whenever people say that there's a clash between doing something morally right and doing something which is expedient, he says, he's saying, you see, this is a wrong distinction. Because for him, what he's saying is that, and I'll clarify what he's saying, is that when you do something morally right, it is expedient. Right? What is that which is expedient is morally right, and what is morally right is expedient. It is only people who are selfish who says that, oh, it's either between doing something morally right and doing something expedient. Only people who are selfish, only people like you and I, we mask our selfishness by saying, by making a distinction between morally right and expedient. When Cicero says, you see, those are people who are not of good moral standing. They are the ones who will say you either do something that is morally right or do something that is expedient. But Cicero says, you see, this is wrong. Why? Because what is morally right is also expedient. And what is expedient, or what is advantageous to you, is also morally right. The reason why he's saying this is because whenever you do something right, and this goes back to the issue of natural law, of nature, following your own nature. You see, for Cicero, human beings like you and I, we were already given by nature, right? From the moment that we were born, a natural endowment, a natural ability, a natural endowment of reason. And reason tells us that whatever is right, you should do it. Why? Because if what you do is reasonable, then it is good not just for you, but for everyone around you. Right? So you will never get an issue about what is morally right and what is expedient. In other words, what he's trying to say is that only to a virtuous person there is no such thing as morally right and expedient. Because for a morally perfect person, there is no such thing as morally right and expedient. Right? He is above that. However, imperfect human beings like you and I, because we try to mask our selfishness, because we are of not good moral standings, right? Hence we make a distinction between, it's either I do something that is morally right or do something that is expedient for me. So for Cicero, what he's trying to say is that only if you are selfish, say for instance, going back to the example of the student, only if you are a selfish student, right, and you are a student of not a good moral standing, then you will be the one who will say, I either pass, I should either do this, I should either fail honorably, or I should either pass by cheating, which is expedient for me, advantageous for me. But then if the student is, say for instance, this is just an example, right? But say for instance that the student is a virtuous person, right, of a good moral standing, then for that student there is no such thing as I either pass honorably, I either fail honorably, or either cheat and pass. There's no two options. For a morally, for a virtuous person, right? For a more virtuous person, the issue is simple. I will not cheat. That's it. I will, because I did not learn, I did not study last night. I'll just fail honorably, right? That is it. There's not even an option of should I cheat. Even the feeling of should I cheat, even the thinking of should I cheat will not even come to a person who is of good moral virtue. I hope you get my point. And that's what Cicero is trying to tell his son. I don't expect you to be the perfect human being, right? But don't make the mistake of trying to distinguish, trying to separate what is morally right and what is expedient. Because nowadays, we have this issue, right? Nowadays, people say, you know what? Say, for instance, you are a seller, right? You are a businessman. You have a shop. And you know that things or goods the saman or the goods in your the things in your the products which you're selling in your shop are defective, right? They're damaged, but you will still sell it. Why? Because it is convenient for you, right? It is expedient for you. It is advantageous for you. You will not tell the seller, you will not tell the buyer, whoever is coming to your shop and buying things from you, you will not tell that person that, oh, you know what, don't buy this biscuit. Why? Because this biscuit has already gone bad, right? You will not tell that. Why? Because it is advantageous for you. Because you are a shopkeeper and you want to sell your things and you want money. And hence, the issue is you will sell without telling the buyers the defects of the product which they are buying from you. Or for instance, right, this is I think this is very relevant in politics, and also this is really relevant in terms of leadership in politics and as a person. You see, for instance, nowadays we make this distinction between, okay, if you just do this, even though it's morally right, you lose out, right? You lose out in life because you are trying to be too good. Why don't you just be more practical? Why don't you do things which is more expedient, which is more convenient, right? Because common sense tells us that if you just say for instance, you're selling a car, right? You're selling a car. So say for instance, I'm selling a car to you, right? I'm selling a car to you. And the thing is this, I want to sell my car because I need a new car, right? I need a new car because which is more convenient for me, right? So the car which I have right now is not very convenient for me. So now the thing is, what should I do? And I also know that the car which I want to get rid of, the car which I'm selling, has a huge defect, right? It needs a major repairing. Say that the car which I'm selling needs a major repairing. But then if I tell that to the buyer, to the potential buyer, that, you know what, even though I'm asking this much, the car needs a major repairing, which will cost, lots of money. Now, if you tell that to the buyer will not buy, right? Who knows? The buyer may still buy, but then who knows? The buyer may still not buy. And you may think to yourself, now, if I say this, if I'm being truthful to the buyer, right, whoever is going to buy my car, then if I tell them about the major repairing that needs to be made, then the buyer may not buy my car. And if the buyer does not buy my car, then how will I get the car which I want or which I need? So now you are in a conflict. Now you are in a conundrum. Cicero is saying to his son, now you are in a conundrum. What would you do? Right? Will you tell the buyer, will you tell the potential buyer that, you know what, I'm selling my car for 1 rupees or 2 rupees, but then it needs a major repairing, and the money will maybe, and just the repairing itself will go around 1 rupees, right? Now the thing is, now you think to yourself, if I tell that to the buyer, will the buyer buy the car? And then the common sense will tell you, right? If you ask anybody, they'll say, oh wow, you know what? They will tell you the common sense expedient thing, right? So the morally right thing to do is that, okay, you know what Cicero is saying is that the morally right thing to do is that, you know what, tell the buyer, I'm asking 1 rupees, however, the car needs a major repairing, and just let it be. But then, the society's common sense, society's expedience would say, why would you do that, right? Don't tell. You'll be stupid. You will be a stupid person to tell the buyer that it needs a major repairing, right? Just don't say it. If you don't ask, don't say it. Just let them buy it, right? Just say that you're asking this much. If they're interested, they can buy, right? That's the common sense thing. In other words, now you are in a conflict, morally right or expedient. Now Cicero is saying, now this is a wrong discrimination, wrong distinction between morally right and expedient. Why? Because what is morally right is expedient, and what is expedient is morally right. In other words, what Cicero is telling his son is that, you see, just tell the buyer that your car has a defect, it needs to be repaired, and you're asking this much. That's it. There's not even a question about, should I hide the information, right? Or should I not tell the information? It's not like that. Because by your nature, reason will tell you that you are wrong to lie to others. You are wrong to deceive others. You may say, I'm not deceiving, I just did not mention it. Why? Because they did not ask. Yeah, but don't take advantage of the fact that you have some information which needs to be told to the other one. Right? Don't hide that information. Be it open. Say it. And let it be. And let the chip fall wherever it will. You see? Now this is very, very important, right? This is very, very important. In other words, for Cicero, even though what we are speaking of right now is a second-class virtues, not the absolute virtue, but a second-class virtue, still, even for the second-class virtue, you must carry yourself to that higher level of moral discipline, right? Where you can be, where you don't have to worry about, if I don't do this, it is not advantageous for you. Of course it is not advantageous for you. But Cicero is saying, you should do what is good for you, but don't do something that is good for you at the expense of your neighbor, at the expense of others, right? Nobody is stopping you from doing what is good for you. Do what is good for you, but do that not at the expense of others. Now, of course, he's telling that to his son, but if you bring that in a political sense, imagine, right? The leaders nowadays, politicians nowadays, everywhere in India and elsewhere, they do things which are advantageous for them and their family. But then when they do things which is good for them, advantageous for them, they take away from their neighbors, from their society, from the poor, from the needy, right? You see? So this is a very, very important concept to be taught and to be understood, because what he's saying, even though what he's saying may seem very, very commonsensical, but then the implication, the consequences of what he's saying is huge, right? It has a huge implication on the way you and I see ourselves, our world, and everything around. The way we construct ourselves, the way we see ourselves, and all the values that we hold. It puts everything into question. So you may say, well, and again, another example would be like this. So nowadays, we say that, oh, you know what, I'm not a tribalist, but then the thing is this. You and your friend, you're having a discussion, say for instance, and then you say, you know what, I don't believe in tribalism. I don't believe in tribalism. I don't believe in groupism or tribalism, because we're in Nagaland. Let's just use an example of here in Nagaland. Because I'm against tribes, right? I'm not a tribalist. But then your friend will tell you, yes, what you're saying is morally right, but then because we live in the world that is wrong, that is just being stupid, you must be expedient, or you must do things which is advantageous for you. Why? Because he's saying, well, if you are not part of a tribe, then how will you enjoy and gain all that benefits that comes along with being part of a tribe, right? Right? That would be stupid, and everybody will tell you that. Everybody will tell you are being stupid to say I'm not a tribalist, right? Everybody will say, oh, you're stupid, because the convenient way, the expedient, which is commonsensical, is that it's better to be part of the tribe. Why? Because it comes with certain advantages belonging to a tribe. Here in Nagaland, if you belong to a big tribe, good for you, because you have more advantage, you have more avenues to get state resources, right? And if you belong to a big tribe and you say, oh, you know what, I don't believe in tribalism, people will say you're being stupid, right? But then Cicero is saying, yeah, let them say that, but you be like that. Don't be, just because everybody's doing it, don't follow, right? And another example would be like this. Like, for instance, how do I put it? Yes, during elections, right? In India, everywhere, even here in Nagaland, right? Even in Manipur, in Assam, right? During elections, politicians, they prefer to spend money, right? Why? No, the thing is this, we have to ask this question. Why do politicians prefer to buy votes, right? Why? Because it's easy, right? It's very convenient. I'll just spend money, and then you sell your votes, and for the next 5 years, don't ask anything from me, right? That's it. Because in order to actually come up with the development policies, in order to actually come up with a plan to how to develop a society, is very, very difficult, right? And nowadays, the politicians are stupid, right? They're idiotic. I'm sorry. They're very, very wise. They're full of knowledge. I'm just kidding. But what I'm trying to say is that, you see, it's a hard work to come up with a plan to make sure that that the society is developed. It's a difficult thing. It's an arduous, difficult task to come up with a plan for the betterment of the society, for the betterment of everybody. You see, it's a very difficult thing. That's why the politicians, they prefer, shortcut, convenient, right? Expedient. Here you go. I'll just give you the money. Here you go. It's easier. And then you say yes. So here you go. Take it, right? And don't ask anything. And that's why in countries like India and in societies like Nagaland and Assam and Manipur, the progress of development is very slow, precisely because of this. And if you are the voter, right? Why do you sell your votes? Say that, for instance, you have a family, you live in a village, you have 3-4 children, you think about the schools, right? House, what to feed them. And then here you go, you have a politician coming and giving you money, 10,000 rupees, 20,000 rupees. Now, Cicero would say, if you do what is morally right, then even the convenient thing for you to do, the most expedient thing for you to do is not accept the money, right? Not accept the money. But because we are imperfect, most of us are imperfect human beings, we say, oh, you're stupid if you don't accept the money which has been given to you. If the politician gives you 10,000 rupees, 20,000 rupees for your vote, you will be a fool. The whole village will scold you, right? And they will label you as a stupid person for not taking the money. Why? Because you could have taken the money and fed your children and blah, 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 right? Which is also true, but then that's morally wrong. And you may think that there is no consequences, but there is a consequences. Once you start selling your votes, development never comes, right? And it will never come. And it has not. If you don't believe me, go back to your own village and see if development has come. It has not, right? But once you stop, if you do something which is morally right, and hence also expedient, then if you stop selling your votes, then even the politicians, they have to take up the difficult task, no choice but take up the difficult task of coming up with a plan to bring development for everybody. Right? I hope you're getting my point. You see, so these are the things which he is trying to make his son understand. You see, this is the world we live in, right? And I'm not even expecting you to become the virtuous person, a man of wisdom, right? A man of wisdom. Because only for a man of wisdom, there is no such thing as expedient and morally right. Because he knows, like a second nature to him, he knows that what is morally right is convenient, what is morally right is expedient, and what is expedient is morally right. There is no distinction because they are the same, and what is same, and they are good. Right? Morally right is good, hence expedient is good, and hence expedient is good, morally right is good. But it is because you and I, because we are imperfect human beings, we make this distinction between something that is morally right, something that is expedient, in order to mask, in order to hide our selfishness. Right? I hope you get my point. You see? So, he uses this example. So ultimately what he's trying to say is that, you see, I'm not against every individual trying to better themselves. Go. Do something that will be good for you. But do those things without injuring your neighbor, without injuring others, without injuring the society. Why? Because if you do something that is advantageous for you, and you do that at the cost of the society, of your neighbors, then you break the bond of union. Then there's no fellowship between the citizens. You damage the social life. And this is exactly what is happening here in Nagaland. This is exactly what is happening here in India, right? Between Hindus and Muslims, right? And between different tribes here in Nagaland. Same thing. Because everybody is trying to do something that is advantageous for them, but they are doing so at the cost of others, at the cost of other members of the society. This happens, right? So he uses an example. So in order to show what he's talking about, that he's not just talking about some abstract, idealistic thing. He gives his son an example, and he gives the example of Hercules, right, from the Greek mythology. So he says, look at Hercules. Try to emulate, try to copy, try to emulate actions and the lives of Hercules, right? He was the most handsome, the most beautiful, the strongest, right? He excelled everybody in strength and beauty. But even though he had such a thing, right? And he was also like a demigod, right? Demigod. In other words, mother was human, father was God, right? in Greek mythology. So imagine he's half human, half god, and then he excels everybody else in strength and beauty. But then he voluntarily, right? He voluntarily says, and he willingly says, you know what? Instead of living a life of wealth and riches and pleasure, I am going to voluntarily, willingly face the greatest challenges, greatest toil, greatest difficulties, so that I may help others. Right? In other words, he preferred the life of service. Right? He preferred the life of service over living a life of riches and wealth. Right? And so he's saying, the more nobler the character of a person is, right? If you are endowed with noble character, the more will you prefer to live a life of service, right? Now, can we say the same thing nowadays? If somebody is handsome, if somebody is, beautiful, if somebody is strength, if somebody is, strong, and if somebody has riches, instead of trying to be humble and try to be like Hercules, voluntarily giving up all that wealth, giving up all that, riches, and voluntarily going and facing difficulties, challenges, troubles, and toils in order to help others. Nowadays, we find people who have strength and wealth to live, to live in a very worldly sense, right? They're not humble. So that's what he's saying. That's what he's telling his son. Now, be like that. Don't be like those who tries to live a life with no aim to better himself or herself, right? Because once you try to appropriate when you try to appropriate for your own selfish end, for your own selfish purpose, those things which should be given to the society, which are meant for the society, which are meant for everybody, then you damage the union. You damage the union between human beings. You damage the union between the fellowship between citizens, right? And this is exactly what's happening, right? Because everybody, even from politicians to bureaucrats to contractors to everybody, right? Everybody's trying to take for himself and herself something for himself or herself at the cost of the society. And that's why you have more tribal animosity, more more trust deficit, right? You see? So you may think again, so for instance, you may think that, and these are some really, really essential points which whether we like it or not, have a huge implication on politics and political philosophy and political ethics. So what he's trying to say is, another example that he uses is that, you see, you may say to yourself that, I will not take something away. Okay, you know what? I will do something that is good for me, but then I'll do so not by taking away or not by robbing my parents or my brothers or my tribe, right? But then my relations with the other tribes, that's another thing, right? You may say that, right? That, I will do something that is advantageous for me, but I will do that by taking away things which should go to other tribes, not from my tribe, right? And so for Cicero, that would be like, oh, that's just, heights of stupidity, right? Like literally. Because you are not realizing the fact that whether you like it or not, everybody is involved. Everybody is part of the society, regardless of they are your family or your tribe or your brothers or whatnot. You are in one way or the other tied to everyone, to every member of the society. And by thinking that, I'm only going to do this at the expense of other tribes, then you are going to damage the society. You're going to damage the social ties. You're going to damage the common interests, right? You're going to damage them. So there is no such thing as, in other words, somebody who thinks that, I will do this at the expense of other tribes, but not my tribe. That means, you make a distinction between, expedient. But then but only a person of low moral virtue will make such a claim. Otherwise, if you do possess even the second grade virtues, then you will not make that claim. You will at least understand that what is virtuous or what is morally right is expedient, and what is expedient is morally right. And what is expedient is right. Why? Because morally right is right. Right? Yeah, right. So here we go. So at last he uses one example, right? He uses an example of a historical figure called Marcus Atilius Regulus. Now he was what do you call it? The consulship, right? In other words, he was a ruler of ancient of Rome of Roman Republic prior to the days of Cicero. So he's using an example. You see, I'll give you an example of one of our consulars. His name was Marcus Atilius Regulus. Now he was the king, more or less the de facto king, right? There was no such thing as a king or emperor in Roman Republic, but you had a consularship, the leader of the army, whatnot. He was defeated by one of Hannibal's general in North Africa, right? He was defeated, and then he was defeated by them, and then he was imprisoned, right? He was imprisoned, and then there we go. He was imprisoned. And so he was released. So Marcus Atilius Regulus was released by I think they were defeated by Hannibal, the Spartans, right? Yeah. Carthage. Carthage, right? They were defeated. The Romans were defeated by the Carthage, and then after Marcus Atilius Regulus was captured, he was released from Carthage on the promise that the Romans will free. The Romans will free the prisoners which the Romans have. The Romans will release the prisoners from Carthage, those generals and soldiers from Carthage, who were imprisoned by the Romans, right, and are there in Rome. So that was the issue. So that was the promise. I mean, you say, so for instance, you are Marcus Atilius Regulus, and I am the general who captured you, right? So say for instance, I'm Hannibal, right? I'm Hannibal. So I'm Hannibal, and you are Marcus Atilius Regulus. You belong to Rome, I belong to Carthage. Now, in a battle, I defeated you, right? And then I took you prison, and I said, you know what? I will release you. I will release you, but on the condition that if I release you, you will go back to Rome, and you will release all the generals and soldiers, all my generals and soldiers which you have captured, right? Who are there in Rome. Release them. And if after you reach Rome and the Roman Senate are unable to release my prisoners, then you will return, right? You will return back to Carthage, right? And then you will be put to prison, and you will be tortured, and who knows, you may even be killed, right? And so Marcus Atilius Regulus says, okay. So he goes back to Rome, right? He goes back to Rome, and then he thinks to himself, and he realizes, you see, if I release the prisoners, right? If I release the prisoners, then it is good for me, right? I don't have to go back to Carthage. I won't be tortured, I will not be imprisoned, and I will not die. However, even if it's good for me, so maybe the thing is, I should release them. But on the other hand, if I think about Rome in general, the Roman Republic in general, it is not good for the Roman Republic. It is good for me, it is not good for the Roman Republic. Why? Because those prisoners are some of the best generals and soldiers from Carthage. And if we send them back, then one day they will come and surely come and defeat us, because these prisoners are some of the most capable generals and soldiers of Carthage. So it's either I do something for my own benefit, or I do something for my own benefit at the expense of the Roman Republic, or I do something for the benefit of the Roman Republic. And if I do something good for the Roman Republic, i.e. not free the prisoners, then it is bad for me, because I have to go back to Carthage, go back to prison, and I'll be tortured, and who knows, I may even die. And in fact, I have children, I have wife, I have children. Who will take care of them, right? Now, What would you do in this situation? Right? What would you do if you were Marcus Atilius Regulus? What would you do? Now, if it was me, right? Say for instance, I was Marcus Atilius Regulus, then I would like, you know what? Screw Hannibal, right? Cool, go back, right? I'm free now, right? I don't have to go back, and I don't even have to keep my promise, right? That's what I will do. Of course, that's what most of us will do nowadays, right? Because even if I don't keep my promise, Hannibal cannot do anything, right? He cannot come to Rome, right? It will be stupid for him to come to Rome, right? He cannot come to Rome, so what can he do? I'm free, right? But then, that's not the case. So what did he do? What did Marcus Atilius Regulus do? He went to the Roman Senate and he said, this was the condition on which I was released. Now, to make the decision, you need my vote, right? Because he's the consul. You need my vote, but then I vote against releasing the prisoners, right? In other words, he was sacrificing his life for the sake of Roman Republic. He was sacrificing his life, then the welfare of his wife, his children. He's giving up all of that. He says, you know what? I'm not going to release those prisoners, because if I release them, it will be bad for the Roman Republic. That's why I will not release them. I will vote against the release of, and my vote counts. I will vote against the release of the prisoners, and I will go back to Carthage. No matter the consequences, I will go back to Carthage and face the consequences. Imprisonment, torture, and maybe even death. Right? And that's exactly what Marcus Atilius Regulus did. He went, he said, we are not going to release. Why? Because it is bad for the Roman Republic. These are some of the great generals. These are some of the great soldiers from Carthage. If you send them back, they will come and cause great damage to the Roman Republic. I don't want that. So I will go back to Carthage. I will go back. I will be imprisoned again. I will be tortured, and I may even die. But regardless, I will face it. Why? Because look at me now. I am old. I'm getting old. Right? So my life is almost at the end. So what's the point of destroying the Republic at the cost of me living a convenient life over here in Rome? So he goes back to Carthage. He goes back to Carthage, and then he's put in prison, he's tortured, and then he died. You see, now the thing is this. Cicero is telling his son, who is in Greece, using an example of Marcus Atilius Regulus, that's what I want you to do. Right? That's the kind of virtue I'm talking about. He's giving his son real life examples, illustrations of what he's talking about, what he's trying to make his son understand. Now, these are the things which are very, very essential in politics. Will you really find the same sort of individuals in the politicians today? Will you find that in your own country, in your own society, in your own state? Will you find character as noble, as lofty as Marcus Atilius Regulus, who was willing to forego, willing to sacrifice his own advantage for the sake of the society? Now that's what Cicero is saying. Now, those are the things, those are the kind of virtues I want you to imbibe on and learn and practice. Right? And so he ends the book, and so he ends his book, which was written for his son, De Officii, by this. It's if you have not read it, but let me read it out. This is a very beautiful passage. It says, "For neither goodness, nor generosity, nor courtesy can exist any more than friendship can, if they are not sought of and for themselves, but are cultivated only for the sake of sensual pleasure or personal advantage." And that's very true, right? Because if you do anything for the sake of your own personal advantage, for the sake of your own benefit, then there is no such thing as true genuine goodness or true genuine generosity or courtesy or friendship or friendship, right? Those things will never exist. Those things will never happen. You will never have in the society courtesy, generosity, goodness, friendship, fellowship, if you don't pursue fellowship and goodness and friendship for the sake of it, for the sake of friendship itself. If you only create friends for the sake of your own personal benefit, then something is very wrong, right? So that's the kind of virtue which Cicero was trying to proselytize or teach his son. And then these are the kind of virtues which are, even though we speak of in an individual sense, these are very, very essential, especially for great statesmen and leaders and even politicians, right? Because it is them, the politicians, it is politics that decides much of the life in a society, right? Whether a society is good or bad, developed or non-developed, the levels of morality, levels of norms and ethics, these are more or less decided. These are the consequences of what the politics decides. And hence it's all the more necessary and essential that the politicians themselves, and in politics, those who are in politics, to emulate and have those kinds of moral character and virtuous character which Cicero was trying to make his son learn and observe and be those things and emulate and personify those virtues which he was trying to demonstrate, right? So with this, I hope you see the essentiality, not just the essentiality, but also the huge implications of moral duties, right? The office of moral, or not just moral duty, but also the appropriateness of one's moral worth, not just in individual life, but also in politics, right? Okay, I hope you enjoyed the lecture on Cicero, and I'll see you guys very soon. Thank you so much. Thank you.